Today is November 20th, 2014, and I'm going to bring up some of the rape strategies that the United States government used against me when I was just a baby and a toddler. And that extended into my childhood and also when I was older than that. But there were a couple of different scenarios and situations that they put me in to try to deliberately train me to accept being raped, which basically meant they would repeatedly sexually assault me, and then if I didn't, and then every time that I did something about it or tried to fight them off or screamed or did anything like that, they'd torture me. And they keep doing this over and over and over until, and then show me that they were going to do it whether I screamed or not. And then they tried to condition me to accept being raped. And after they worked on getting me to not scream or fight them off, with the fear that I would be attacked with a weapon of some kind, they also then began trying this mind game where it was quote unquote like programming, where they take a person like a kid and repeatedly make them say or do the same thing to a trigger word or to something that an action that they initiate, and then they do it so many times that they want it to become part of your subconscious instead of part of your instantaneous response when they later use that same trigger word or action against you. So they didn't just try to keep me from fighting them off and screaming and trying to report things or call for help or run away. They also they started working on trying to make it look like I'd be rewarded if I didn't scream or fight and if I went along with everything, and that if I pretended well enough that nothing bad had ever happened and that we're all just friends and this was all okay, if I pulled it off well enough, they'd leave me alone for a longer amount of time, and I wouldn't get tortured. So this was not just keeping me from screaming and fighting out. It was also to have me look like I was going along with it. And the better that I faked it and the more I acted to make it look like I was really okay with everything and we're all just friends, the less likely I was to get assaulted and tortured. And there was no way out for me. So it's not like I was an adult, and even many adults do not have ways out for whatever reason. But it's not like I had a car and I was an adult woman and I had a cell phone on me and some mace and nobody had ever blackmailed me and I had all the freedom in the world to just kick someone, run out of a house and into a car and drive off, or just leave the entire situation and run away. I had no way to get away because I was a kid, and before that I was a toddler and, a baby, and I was completely controlled by the United States, who were controlling my parents. And some of the time, my parents were not even there. But most of the time, at least one of them was. And the United States government wanted it that way because then they could blame the parent and make threats about that instead of taking responsibility for themselves and for their agencies. So, I'm going to give you a short list of a couple of tactics that they used, and then I'm going to describe them. And it will probably take a few different clips, video clips, for me to get through all that. But one is just situations of sexual molestation, being molested when I was a baby, which I remember. And when you're that young, you remember things like that, but they don't necessarily seem wrong. You just remember them. I didn't know why people were doing these different things, but they were. It's just how it was. And another tactic they used when I was an older baby to a pretty young toddler was blow jobs for the bottle. Basically, they would force me to do blow jobs for men, and then they'd give me my bottle of milk. And that was a real nice invention of the United States government. And you know, that's not just like, oh, do a blow job and we'll give you some milk. It was like guns. Well, when I was very young, that's how it was. And then when I started to fight it or resist it, it was guns and knives and all of that involved. Some of that training to have me learn how to do blowjobs involved sucking on United States government officials' toes. And on lollipops, they would get lollipops and ice cream cones and try to train me on how to move my tongue, and then ask me to do the same thing as they instructed me on how to use my tongue. They would try to have me do that to their penises. They also played this whole mistress kind of a game, where they wanted to have me in bed with a man and his wife or his significant other. And they did this often, and I was young. Again, I mean, it wasn't even in elementary school when they were starting that. And they were, they'd have me included with them as if I was like a mistress or something, and then they'd punish me if I did something wrong, and try to make the object of the game to have me feel desperate and ask for the man to be with me instead of this other woman. And I think that was to deflect from the fact that, well, to deflect for a lot of reasons, but that is another tactic, and then I can describe that in more detail later. But I also know that they wanted to create a psychological profile to try to use against me, which I really didn't have. But they wanted to make it look like I was, like I'd have a rejection reaction or a borderline problem. And I recognize what they were doing now, but as a kid, I didn't know. I mean, because as a kid, you're dependent on adults for a lot of things. So then, another thing that they did was they made me watch porn. That was another thing that went along with training me with all this sex stuff, and they took porn of me. when I was very little. Another specific rape tactic that they used was to start raping me, and if I screamed or tried to fight them off, they'd have a phone ring. And if the phone rang, then the person would pick it up who was raping me, or someone would, and they'd talk to this other person on the other end of the phone, or have me talk to them. And if I dared not go along with everything from that point on, or if I tried to report it over the phone to that person who had just called, they would viciously beat me until I was bloody, and they would electrocute me, and then they'd rape me, or sexually molest me. So basically, they were repeatedly instilling in me this idea that, well, you can fight it, but if you do, you're not going to get anywhere, so why fight it? And every single one of these individuals that I remember being involved in this kind of activity was a United States government employee. And they also trafficked me to other countries and had other people from other places assault me. But it was initiated and started by the United States and sponsored by the United States. So some of the other ideas they came up with later when I was an older kid, which I'll get into, is stuff like do it for the FBI, do it for your country. Started trying to abuse my sympathies for how I was going to be saving all of these lives. And it was basically a scam. I wasn't saving anyone's life. This kind of activity was not saving lives. They were destroying my life, and they were actually stealing from me, and they were stealing billions of dollars from me when I was a kid and trying to frame me for various things because they wanted to keep stealing from me. And they made a lot of money off of me with this whole sex thing at first. And then when they started making more money off of me for songwriting that I did, they got nervous because they couldn't have a celebrity, that they had so viciously molested and abused. Because, what are they going to do with a victim that ends up acquiring some amount of personal power or independence financially? So, the other thing that they did was, and when I say I was tortured, that also includes sometimes like chaining me up and leaving me in a place isolated for days or without food. So it was not like, just spot on torture in that exact moment. I was getting punished for sometimes up to weeks. And they also did this same kind of thing in trying to force me to take drugs. They introduced me to different drugs when I was young, and they'd torture me, and then they'd torture me until I would keep taking a drug from them. And they wanted to create a dependency in me to take that drug. And if I didn't want to, because I didn't always want to, they would just keep torturing me until I asked for this drug. And that kind of went along with the same idea of raping me and then torturing me until I accepted rape. When they tortured me, they would torture me until I accepted drugs. And it was all sort of a way to build up this case against me for things that they did against me. So, let's make her look like she has a problem and she's nuts, drug-seeking, and a slut. And we're just the nice, good government guys.